Welcome again, everyone, for the webinar on verified volunteers. My colleague on the phone, Troy Gerber from Verified Volunteers, is going to take us through the content. And Troy, thank you so much for being here. We're glad to have you and hear more about this great service.
Okay. Well, thank you for the warm introduction, Sarah. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Well, yeah, we are too excited about the partnership with the Michigan Nonprofit Association and being able to offer a new platform for background screening for volunteer use to its members. As you mentioned, the partnership is albeit new. Our platform and model is been around for several years now, but we are taking this to the state of Michigan in the nonprofits serving in the state. But the overall industry that we serve here at Verified Volunteers, we've been in business since about 1970s. We're owned by a company called Sterling Backcheck. And the way the story goes is, traditional screening has been run kind of the same way as sales pace for many decades. But we thought there might be a better way to serve the nonprofit sector nationally as well as locally. And so a few years back, Sterling had worked with Points of Light to come up with a new way of screening, a way in which we can get the volunteers more engaged, as well as serving out in the community faster. And one of the hurdles to serving faster in the communities we heard through partnerships is that background screening was always a hurdle to serving fast, right? So in essence, the solution for that is now Verified Volunteers really stemmed from listening to members in our partnerships. And just like a true partnership with Michigan Nonprofit Association, is you guys not only are the eyes and the ears of your members, but we've also listened as well, and would continue to encourage your members to help us refine what is volunteer screening as it is changing. But the new model for volunteer background checks that is being offered through Verified Volunteers is the first of its kind in the service sector. Traditionally, the way volunteers has been run in the past for volunteer screening, that it has been time consuming, right? These are the hurdles. There's also an element of poor quality of screening when outsourcing background checks, and it's also been expensive. And then volunteers would have to go through multiple hurdles. Every time they serve, another nonprofit's asking them for the same information. We need your background check, we need your background check. So we thought there had to be a better way. So the new paradigm shift that Verified Volunteers offers M&A members is what's called the Verified Volunteers Fast Pass. This is for the first time where these volunteers can take some ownership and self-engage and get out and serve faster in their community once they have kind of a background check that they can own and manage in a simple account. We would give them and empower them to share it with other nonprofits in their community, and do so in a way that wouldn't cost them additional funds, right? And it would free up those volunteers to serve faster than ever before, because we're removing one of those hurdles for them to serve. So this Fast Pass, from a high 10,000-foot view, works in essence by a nonprofit organization invite volunteer to undergo background check. That volunteer comes online and creates a simple account, gives permission to undergo that background check, and they can even pay for their background check if they would like to help the organization. But once they have that simple account, they can share it with other nonprofits, and in doing that shared report, they can earn credits along the way for future background checks. So that's how it works at a high level. But we've also learned that all background checks aren't created equal, so we looked at not only technology, but we looked at the product offerings, and it has been a fruit cart of offerings by many different background screening companies over the last decade. But we've come to an understanding here at Verified Volunteers that there isn't one size-fits-all approach, but what is important when we do a background check on every volunteer is to ensure we're getting information that is up to date, and it's information that can be used in the vetting process. And so at Verified Volunteers, we do perform a national sex offender public website check on every single volunteer, and we also run them through a national criminal database on every volunteer. And historically, what you haven't been getting with these national databases before is that you might just get some raw information and you're not sure if the records that you're reviewing belong to your volunteer and what have you. But at Verified Volunteers, we do things a little bit differently. Anytime we find a criminal record in our national database, we'll actually validate and verify the information at the county courthouse before disclosing it to the nonprofit. And so when we do that validation process, it ensures that our clients, our nonprofit organizations, are receiving information that they can use, right, and make decisions upon. So what we have at Verified at the core is a little bit different than what's been in the marketplace for many years. So we looked at creating what's called a common currency across the platform, give control over to nonprofits to choose a specific level of screen that best fits their needs, right? So at the end of the day, if you have some volunteers that have maybe some low risk, low client contact interaction, but then other volunteers you may have more risk associated if they were working with children or the elderly in that fashion. We did create some standardized packages that the nonprofits can tap into, right? In all of these packages, what's in our level 1 or level 2 or level 3 screen check is that you always get that 50-state sex offender registry check. You'll always get a nationwide criminal database search, but you also be getting monthly updates for the first time on every volunteer. So no longer are the days of just one and done and thank you. We're actually going to renew that background check every 30 days for a 12-month cycle at no additional cost for the nonprofit and the volunteer. We feel that if we run a background check every month on the same volunteer, they can go ahead and share it with another nonprofit who would accept that, being that it would be less than 30 days old of information. Now keep in mind the benefit to the nonprofit is that if I was clear on day 1 but then perhaps had a crime convicted maybe in the 4th or 5th month, the nonprofit would see some value in getting those updated reports, right? So that we would send them an alert that, hey, you have an existing volunteer and they have a new criminal record here that you might want to consider before placing them back out into the field or what have you. So this common currency approach is very popular for sharing, right? So if we get a volunteer that has a certain badge, if you will, a level 1 badge or a level 2 badge, they'll be able to share with other nonprofits that would accept the same level of badge, right? So with that said, when we talk about the products, we talk about the technology, what we did create in our community-based platform is a two-sided platform, one for volunteers to engage with and then another side for the nonprofits to manage information. So when we ask the volunteer to come through the platform, it's a very simple 4-step ordering process. Literally takes just a few minutes. We ask them for their identifier information like their name and their date of birth. We need to get their address information and their consent, right? Their written permission to undergo a background check. And if we're going to ask these things from the volunteer, we'll collect it and store it and secure it, but then give them the power to go ahead and find other nonprofits in their community that they can serve and share their background check report. So it is collaborative in a way that matters to the volunteer, and this is the volunteer fast pass. Once they have a background check, they can reuse it and reshare it where they see fit. From the volunteer management perspective for nonprofits, right, when on their side of our platform, we're giving them a plethora of tools and resources to help them organize, track, and manage their background checks. Right now, this platform that we have for nonprofits was designed by volunteer managers, and at the end of the day, it literally will give you a live feed of where your status reports are, what the results of their background checks are, and you can track and manage your background check process right from the dashboard tools that we provide you. So you'll see those that have criminal records, those that do not, what were the action items the organization took when reviewing the criminal records. And so with our tools and technology that we're giving, we're actually providing this at no cost to M&A members. So it is a free platform to join, and this community can only be successful if we can build a number of nonprofits on one platform and have them invite their volunteers to get verified as well. And then once they're verified, we'll have this existing pool of vetted volunteers that can get out and serve faster. And it is key to have local anchors and partners like Michigan Nonprofit Association as well as the national. But we're also seeing this even on local levels in cities and counties where we're getting schools and churches engaged with one another because they share volunteers from time to time. So at the end of the day, what we really have in our community-based platform is a way that nonprofits can save money on receiving free background checks that they would normally have to pay for, and also save the volunteer time and money when being asked to repeat a background check. So the way the partnership and the pricing is working out with the Michigan Nonprofits Association is I did mention that there is no cost. Now, the price for each level of the screen will be based on a couple of factors, but the biggest factor is the number of screens or volunteers that you do screen in a given year. So when we're sending out proposals to your, will vary from, a $10, $7 price point. But at the end of the day, all members are going to receive a 20% discount off our. We do provide the sharing at no cost. We do the monthly updated reports, right? The 12 background checks for the price of one. And those tools for the organization are free. But there is some paperwork that is required under federal law that governs background screening. So when we're activating accounts onto our platform, there is some simple paperwork to complete to keep us in compliance with the federal laws governing background screening companies and its use. But to actually onboard with verified volunteers takes about 1 to 2 business days to get your account activated. And once it's activated, we do provide some individual training as well as 3 standardized training sessions a week, so you guys can pick and choose the time to get trained. The training really is, literally 15 minutes, and we highlight some of the features and benefits of the tools that you'll have access to manage your background check volunteers. So at the value points for this, when we look at building a community, we do have something unique, and that is once the volunteer comes online and orders their background check, the nonprofits can actually elect to have either the organization pay 100% of the cost. We can also elect to have the volunteer pay 100% of the cost. Or we can meet somewhere in the middle. We can have the organization pay, but ask the volunteer if they would like to make a contribution to help defray the cost of the background check. Now, asking a volunteer for a contribution, we have in our data set about 35% of the volunteers will contribute 100% of the cost just by asking if they would like to make a contribution. So if I told you something was $10, and if you're able to help make a contribution, I'm going to tell you on average invoices reduced by 35%. Now, if at the end of the day that report ends up getting shared with another nonprofit, we do give rebates back to the nonprofit organization as well as to the volunteer, whoever has skin in the game for paying for that background check is entitled to a rebate from verified volunteers. So from a budgetary perspective, you could be getting some free background checks for the first time. So, Sarah, I'm not sure if we have too much time, but I think we do have, according to my clock here, we have about 10 minutes for any questions, comments. So I think what we can do at this time is perhaps open up the floor to any questions, and I'll keep my PowerPoint running here and maybe go back to a slide if someone had a question on a specific slide.
Sure. Thanks, Troy. Yep, we do have about 10 minutes here, and if people on the call have questions for Troy, you can use the question function on your screen there, or go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question using the audio function. Use the raise hand function, and I will unmute you, and you can ask any questions that you might have about the service. Okay, Troy, our first question is, do any of your screens include child neglect, like what the Central Registry Clearance Request form would find?
Excellent question. No, the child abuse and neglect is done through the government. I work for a private company, so if the individual organization is being required or mandated under state statute to do a specific check, like a child abuse and neglect registry check, then they are required to do so directly through that site. Now, they certainly could outsource that service to a third party like Sterling or Verified Volunteers, but they would incur more cost than just doing it directly through the government. So some of the data sources that we do offer, and I have this in our common currency screen, when I look through this, the National Sex Offender Public website is checked, and then we can also go into criminal elements like county courthouses, state courthouses, and we do have in our level 3 package an arrest record database, which is literally, we're pulling information from sheriff's offices all over the country to alert us of where people have been arrested for crimes. And we may not report the arrest, but having access to that arrest record search tells us which county the crime was committed, and then we'll go to the county courthouse and invalidate the criminal information there. So hopefully that answers their question.
Thank you for that added explanation. Are there other questions that people might have? Troy, I'm not seeing any other questions come up. I know on the final slide there you had your contact information. Oh, I do see a question coming in right now. Looks like, Patrick, you have your hand raised. I'll go ahead and unmute your phone line then. Okay, here's Patrick's question in the question box. For organizations that have long-term volunteers, is there an annual fee to keep the monthly updating active?
Okay, that's a great question. Most of what we're finding in the service sector is when you have a background check policy, without naming names, but there's organizations that have what's called 3-year renewal policies. We have other organizations that have 2-year renewal policies, and we have others that have 1-year renewal policies or no renewal policies. So it's not uncommon to have a policy around renewal checks. So that's let's say if I was Patrick and I had wanted to keep this going perpetually, each year we would have the volunteer come online and do a background check to update their profile. However, with that said, is when we do the initial screen, Patrick, we're actually going to keep going for 11 additional months, so you'll have 12 months of coverage. And so if you wanted to have them renew at the 13th month, we have an automatic alert that would go out to your volunteer, letting them know that their background check is about to expire. This will come out a month before, so this will be in the 11th month. And then they can go back online and renew their background check. And at that time of renewal, yes, they will be required to pay again, or the organization can pay. But if you have, let's say, a 2-year renewal policy, where we're finding benefits here is that the first year the background checks are being done. So a lot of these policies are based on the last time the background check was ordered. So if you can look forward 11 months, I got a 2-year renewal policy, I might not have to have the volunteer go back online for literally 35 months if I have a 2-year renewal policy, because the last time they updated the report was in the 12th month, so you can actually extend your renewal out another year. Hopefully that answers Patrick's question.
Yep, it looks like it does there, Troy. Got thank you messages from both our question askers. Anyone else? And it looks like most people have had their questions answered. Again, on the final page of the PowerPoint, Troy has his phone number and email address up there, so I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer any questions that people may have after today's webinar.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a wonderful day and stay warm.